On trapping and hunting? Well, I don't have very strong feelings about it because I'm neither a trapper or a hunter. But I think at times, I think hunting is all right. I don't have any negative feelings about hunting.
I don't believe in telling animals to wear them.
On trapping, I don't know enough about it to have really strong views.
And they don't use the traps with those awful teeth.
And as far as hunting's concerned, I mean, my family's policy was if you killed something, you ate it. So we weren't out there just maliciously killing things.
Bottom line is, I don't agree with trapping, but if someone else wants to do it, you know, I guess I can't restrict their ability to do it. I wouldn't want to restrict them. I just don't agree with it.
I don't really know much about this, to tell you the truth, but I think it's a lot of fuss.
Leather. Well, I can't say that I don't use leather because I do use leather, so.
Is it because it's an animal?
I guess so. I don't know. It's kind of a double standard, I guess.
Everything usually has two points of view, two sides to it. Most things, the answer to most questions is somewhere in the middle.
To some, trapping and the use of fur is a controversial issue. Often, the debate is accompanied by misinformation and misunderstanding on both sides. This video takes a closer look at trapping and what it means to wildlife and to people. Trapping is managed and regulated by wildlife agencies in each state. These agencies are staffed by professionals trained in and dedicated to the conservation of wildlife. Bob Blewett is a wildlife biologist for the Illinois Department of Natural Resources.
A lot of people I talk to wonder how I can care so much about wildlife and yet endorse hunting and trapping. And over the years I've found that there are three common misconceptions among people who don't really understand our support for those activities. One is that they believe that trapping causes species to become endangered. The second is that people can just go out and hunt or trap and do what they please without any restrictions on them. The third is that trapping only benefits those people who participate in it.
But I think trapping is a legitimate way to harvest animals that you may be in excess of.
I think that it is harmful to our ecosystems. I think that those animals are preying on other animals. Animals are preying on them, and that we should leave those ecosystems in place.
Many people have the misconception that hunting and trapping cause animal populations to decline. That's simply not true. Since the advent of modern wildlife management, a lot of the species that we have in Illinois that are hunted and trapped are more abundant today than they were 50 or 100 years ago. For example, here I have the results of our annual raccoon spotlight survey. As you can see, we've had quite an increase in the population during the past few years. As a matter of fact, we figured that at this point in time we probably have more raccoons in the state of Illinois than we've ever had.
The Wildlife Society is an organization of professional scientists and educators. Diana Hallett is a wildlife biologist in Missouri and president of the Wildlife Society.
The Wildlife Society endorses trapping as an effective and humane management tool for wildlife conservation. As a wildlife biologist, my primary concern is the health and welfare of wildlife populations. Today, there is little chance of trapping threatening a wildlife population. Wildlife populations naturally reproduce and produce more young per year than the habitat can support. Trapping is one way of taking those extra animals that Mother Nature would normally do.
If you're dealing with people who are responsible for the trapping and the hunting, who are responsible people, and who have some method of reporting that responsibility, or some oversight, so that there is a method of knowing that what they're doing is a benefit to the society and that they're not just going off hog wild doing what they want to do.
Tom Decker is a division director for the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department.
Well, agencies care a lot about the welfare of wildlife that we're responsible for managing. Trapping is heavily regulated. We look to license people who are going to go afield and do this activity, provide education and training programs for them so that they understand everything that they are doing out there. In regulating trapping, we regulate things like season length, season timing, bag limits, those type of things to make sure that they're in sync with the seasonal calendar of the animals. So for example, we don't generally allow hunting and trapping seasons when the animals have young or small offspring. Agencies spend a great deal of money and time annually to improve these tools and techniques to ensure that they're being done appropriately.
State and federal wildlife management agencies are currently participating in a national study to find the best traps and design education programs that teach the best ways to use them. This study will result in a list of best management practices, or BMPs, that trappers can use to become even better stewards of the wildlife resource. Sue Langlois is a wildlife biologist in Massachusetts.
As a wildlife biologist, I would not worry about trapping as an activity that would cause populations to become endangered, because they are a heavily regulated activity today. Modern trapping ensures that there is a season limit, that the activity is done responsibly, and the regulations in place ensure that a sustained harvest can be maintained. Trapping devices are designed for two main functions: as live restraining devices and as quick kill devices. Live restraining devices like box traps or foothold traps are designed to catch the animal alive and unharmed. They could be used also by fur harvesters if they had caught a non-target animal, an animal they didn't intend to catch. They can actually release that animal. Quick kill devices are actually a device that, when the animal engages the trap kills the animal quickly, like a mouse trap.
This trap here is 1.5 size, has a spread across the jaws when it's open of about 4.5 inches. So they're not very big traps.
We regulate the size of traps, the types of traps that can be used, and sometimes even locations of the traps. That the traps of the antique traps that a lot of people think of, the tooth traps, are actually something that are no longer allowed.
In addition to regulating the activities of trappers, wildlife agencies monitor and study wildlife so that management decisions are based on scientific information. This information is gathered from trappers and from surveys conducted by the agencies.
Right now we're doing a spotlight survey. A biologist and a conservation police officer each ride together and spotlight the entire route, count the number of animals that they see. We're particularly interested in raccoons, opossums, skunks, and deer. It's a raccoon. Where? Right there. See him? The spotlight survey is just one of many surveys that we do to track changes in the numbers of wildlife. It's part of responsible management. You need to know what that population is doing so that you can manage it correctly.
I have leather shoes on. I mean, I'm not to the extent of limiting my own consumption in terms of necessities as far as that goes. Like, you have to work, so I can't wear plastic shoes to work. They'd probably, not go for that.
But if you kill to eat, if you eat meat, I think it's the same thing, isn't it?
Then you have some people who go the other way and go, oh no, all animals, don't wear leather, don't eat eggs, don't drink milk. Well, there's a reason why we're able to do it. I think that's the natural order of things too.
Some people subscribe to the philosophy of animal rights. That is, animals have rights equal to people. They don't believe in eating meat or using animals as food or in wearing leather, and even to the degree, some cases, of not controlling insect pests in the home. Agencies don't share that philosophy. We believe wildlife can be managed responsibly and appropriately and utilized to provide a variety of benefits to citizens.
People have a lot of misconceptions that only the fur of fur bearers are used, where actually a lot of the animals are used as a food, particularly beaver, raccoon, and muskrat will be used to feed their families or to feed their pets, and other parts of the animal are used also.
Many of the animals caught by trappers are sold to fur buyers located in rural communities across the country. The rural fur buyers prepare the fur for resale, market other useful parts of the animals, and send the rest to an animal byproducts facility. These byproducts are used in everything from soaps and car tires to pet foods, lubricants, and preservatives such as mink oil.
I think that it is appropriate to have some licensing and some regulation over people and an effort to control the population of what we call the wildlife, because in fact they can themselves, even if left to their own devices, can cause problems among themselves because we've prevented the natural order of things. Because we're here, for instance, one particular type of wildlife could become overabundant just because its natural predator doesn't exist anymore.
Without trapping, some animal populations increase so much that they cause problems for themselves and for people. For example, muskrats may eat so much of their habitat for food that they literally eat themselves out of house and home and die from starvation. This affects not only the muskrats, but all the other wildlife that depend on that wetland for survival. The beaver is another example. Once rare because of unregulated killing and habitat destruction, beaver are now plentiful in almost every state. Like the river otter, they have been restored using traps.
Beaver can actually be a wildlife biologist's greatest challenge. Beaver flowages are incredible wildlife habitat, and so they are areas where so many different types of animals benefit, but they can also be areas that can cause some great amounts of damage. Beavers that flood roads or buildings or even wells or septic systems can obviously be a big problem for the people that are incurring that damage. Besides the flooding damage, other types of damages that beaver can cause would be the girdling of trees, or actually the felling of trees across power lines or roads. Trapping is a necessary tool that helps balance the needs between people and wildlife. In situations where problems do occur, trapping is an option that can be used to alleviate the situation. It's also a tool that can be used during a heavily regulated harvest season to ensure that the populations are maintained at lower levels.
Trapping doesn't control populations all of the time or prevent all types of damage. But trapping can be an important tool in managing wildlife in a responsible way for the benefit of people and wildlife.
If it's for the purpose of saving the species from being extinct, most certainly.
Trapping not only plays a key role in maintaining healthy wildlife populations, but can be critical to restoring wildlife and to protecting endangered species.
Hey, buddy. You're going out soon enough.
The restoration of river otters in many states is a perfect example. These otters were trapped in Louisiana, where they're abundant, and relocated to Illinois. This project was funded in part by fees paid by hunters and trappers. The otters being released here were captured with the same foothold traps used by trappers. Trapping also is used to reduce predators that prey on endangered species, such as the least tern and the piping plover.
Oh, I hope that the benefit is worth it. You know, I'm assuming it's worth it. But I think the education part is important too. For your department to educate the public, educate people like me who don't know much about it, so that we understand the connection between the trapping and this jacket.
Managing our nation's wildlife is an important and complex task. The state wildlife agencies charged with this responsibility respect all points of view. These agencies support trapping because trapping is critical to proper management for the benefit of both wildlife and people.
People do have misconceptions about these programs and trapping, and it is responsible and important for us to go out and help people understand. Regulated trapping does provide a variety of benefits to wildlife and to people, but this public understanding is important because with that understanding we can secure a place for wildlife to thrive and have healthy populations and these benefits for future generations, and that's really our goal.